Hi, this is Ed Rising, and welcome back to Ed's Pop-O-Matic podcast, a retro pop culture podcast where everything retro beats anew if you keep it in your heart. Today, we're going to talk about a magazine called Crazy, and it kind of came out similarly to or at least in following Mad Magazine and things like that. And we have two wonderful guests coming in to talk about that and their new book, which pays tribute to this crazy magazine. And there's the book right there from Mark. We have Mark Arnold, returning guest, and Mark Slade, a brand new guest. And so we're going to kind of take things away. And there's the book again.
Somewhere.
All right, so
right.
Mark Slade, can we start taking this away, and can you tell us a little bit about the history of
uh,
Crazy?
Tell you what, why don't you start with Mark Arnold instead?
Okay, let's start with Mark Arnold then. Whatever
Okay.
turns you
All
on.
right. Yeah. Uh, well, you kind of hit the nail on the head. It's like it's a Mad Magazine wannabe. Um, but it's not. It was published by Marvel Comics, which is still around today. Everybody knows the movies and all that stuff. But if you go way back, uh, Mad Magazine started out as a comic book in the 1952, and so all the other comic book publishers followed suit. So Stan Lee, who's there always at Marvel, pretty much, started a comic book version of Crazy called Crazy. And
Yeah,
it lasted for about 7 issues in the early 1950s, right around the time when Mad was being published as a comic book.
yeah,
But Marvel took it one step further, is they couldn't just do one title. So they did another title called Wild and another title called Riot. And they had them kind of running concurrently, all kind of doing parodies of comic strips and comic books and the same stuff you'd read in early Mad, that type of stuff.
so you kind of figured that they were trying to compete with themselves by putting out different similar type magazines.
Well, I think Marvel always used to do that. They stopped later, and there's a reason for that, but I won't go into it. But at the time, Marvel was the distributor. Pretty much would distribute anything, and so there's if you really know your Marvel Comics history, they didn't just publish comic books. I mean, they published men's magazines, they published
Yeah,
newspapers, they
yeah.
published just about anything that you could think of, for a number of years. So it's like just comic books was one of their sidelines, and they didn't even call it Marvel back then. It was called Timely Comics,
Yeah,
back in the early days. But they did have a title called Marvel Comics that became Marvel Mystery Comics. So they used the Marvel name here and there
yeah,
during those years. But like even when Crazy and Riot and Wild were out, they were under was known as the Atlas imprint, which they had for a time too. So it's just all this weirdness of what Marvel did and just kind of stocked the shelves. But all the publishers kind of did that. They had multiple, like Harvey always had like multiple Casper and Richie Rich titles and things like that.
right.
Now, Archie had a whole slew of Archie does this, Archie does that, Archie stubs his toe. So it wasn't uncommon for publishers to do this.
Yeah,
Um, the thing that Marvel didn't have at this time was major success with any of these titles. They all lasted about 7 or 8 issues, and then the fad kind of went away, and so Marvel just stopped publishing those titles as well. The only thing that kind of stuck as usual is like superhero stuff and a few other things. And then Mad turned into a magazine, and Marvel tried again at that time with this one called Snafu, and that one only lasted 3 issues. So they really stopped for a long period of time after that, and even lost the rights to the name Crazy for a while, and it went to this other publisher named Charlton. And they published comic books under the name Crazy for a while.
that's wild.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting that they should lose the rights to the name. That you figure that would be copywritten, and how
Yeah.
long does the copyright last?
Well,
Is it 100 years?
copyrights, at least at that time, were 28 years. The rules have changed since, but
Yeah.
also trademarks, they last forever. So, apparently they didn't trademark it, so Charlton snapped it up. Marvel is wiser nowadays. They tend to trademark everything. So,
Oh yeah, they're very yeah.
But
That's
that one
true. They
probably
do.
slipped. That one probably slipped through the cracks, and they said, we're never going to use crazy
And
again."
they keep an eye on Disney, is what they do,
Yeah,
because I
yeah.
think Disney and Marvel are
Well,
in bed
Disney owns
together, right?
Marvel. Yeah, Disney
Disney
owns
owns
Marvel
Marvel,
now.
right?
So
Yeah.
yeah.
So it's interesting. And Stan Lee, who created Ant-Man and Spider-Man and the Incredible Hulk, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
I mean, talking about a guy that really had a tremendous imagination. He created these iconic Marvel superheroes, and then
And
he
I
was
will
turned
say
around into
this.
something like this.
I will say this. I will say co-created, because you'll get fans out there. Stanley didn't do everything. He didn't. Some people say he didn't do anything, but I don't want to go
Okay,
into that. But yes, he co-created a lot of these
it
characters.
becomes a
So
whole Lennon and McCartney thing, right?
yeah, exactly.
It's just Stan was really good at promotion. He was good at promoting and
Yeah.
really good at promoting himself. And Marvel benefited from that. So, you
Yeah,
know,
And Mark wrote this other book, and you could talk about it now. It's like about Marvel Comics itself, with a couple of other friends of his, and so
yeah.
he's versed in the Marvel, of later
Well,
year.
so what was that?
well,
What was that about, Mark? Slade?
it's called the Marvelous Bronze Age. Interviews with the Marvel creators of the 70s and 80s. Did that book with Chauncey Hallworth and Lothar Tuppen. And we interviewed quite a few of the guys who are still around, and found archival interviews and things like that.
Yeah,
Yeah, each one of these books, though, has to have something for me to learn about. I don't always know everything. And one of the best things about that book was we learned that the crazy Marvel Age, Bronze Age stories weren't always written just out of their heads. They were out of their heads when they wrote those stories. Steve Englehart had said that he and Frank Brunner would smoke a doobie before they would start writing some Doctor Strange stuff. And then there was a lot of really good inner office, plays where people didn't get along and things like that. And it shows throughout the interviews. Yeah, it was an interesting time to interview people like Marv Wolfman and Steve Englehart, people like that. Yeah.
sure. And it's a challenge to find people who were around and were contributors or creators and so forth. All these years later,
Yes.
it's amazing.
And who are willing to do it as well, and who are still alive. Yeah.
Exactly. So I was just talking to Mark. I mean, just trying to find some people to come on a podcast sometimes to talk about different subjects that you're passionate about, and you think they're
Yes.
passionate about something, they won't come on and talk about it.
No,
So
that's true.
it is very frustrating. So we're kind of lucky that we have a community that we kind of been involved with. It. A lot of different people get the chance to enjoy these different, whether it's a magazine or it's a piece of music or something along those lines.
And
But I was going to
I
ask
think,
you, Mark, and Mark, we have Mark Slade, we have Mark Arnold here, so we get a little bit confused
It's like
here.
Mark A or Mark S.
We could even call one of you Marky Mark if we wanted to, but I don't know if that's something we want to get involved in. So, but generally, what I'd like to ask both of you is, and maybe Mark Arnold, you want to go first.
Okay.
What was it that brought you to these types of magazines? Was it as a youngster, or did you appreciate the parodies or things along those lines, or what was it that appealed to you?
I always liked humor as a little kid, but I mean, I knew nothing of these humor magazines really until so my outlet of finding humor is, like there's kids magazines like Jack and Jill and Highlights and things like that. But they,
Goofus
they
and
had joke,
Gallant.
yeah, they had joke pages, and they do comic books of Flintstones and the Jetsons and Scooby Doo, so that was humorous, and Donald Duck and all that stuff
And
too.
Archie.
Yeah, Archie, the Harvey stuff and all that stuff. But a lot of that stuff was just kind of given to me. I didn't really go out to seek it. I didn't know comics were worth anything. I didn't know the broad spectrum. Um, but what changed my life as far as that's concerned, and it's talked about in my other book about Mad Magazine, is I was in the grocery store with my mom and my sister, and we are going around. And this is 1974. I was 7 years old. And my sister came across a magazine. We were just looking at all the magazines on the rack of Mad Super Special number 14. And it had these crazy Don Martin's posters in them as a giveaway. And, I looked at this guy's artwork, and I'm like flipping through this thing. And I go, this guy's the best artist I've ever seen in my life. Of course, I'm 7 years old, but and I said, this is incredible. Wow. So I go to my mom, and I didn't know if she was going to buy it or not, because there was like a little bit of casual nudity on the cover and everything. There's like a poster that said "Protect Our Wildlife," and it was like on a beach with everyone not wearing any clothes. Granted, it's a drawing in a Don Martin way, but still, I go, I don't know if my mom will buy this, but I'll try. And she said, okay, 75 cents, and it seemed like a lot of money back then.
Sure.
And I was hooked. Started buying Mad Magazine, and then somewhere along the line within that year, I saw Cracked. And so I said, oh, this one's kind of like Mad, but not as funny. But it's like, but I started buying Cracked too. And then I don't know why I didn't see Crazy right away, but then eventually, about a year later, I saw my first issue of Crazy. And then I said, oh, okay. And I go, so there's a bunch of these things. But,
Now,
Mad was always.
what did you find that was different about Crazy as opposed to, say, Mad or Cracked?
Well, of the three back then, we're talking, 1974 to 1984, that decade, I was the proper age of reading these things. Not, because you're supposed to stop and get into girls and, teenage things and stuff like that, but I never did, so I'm still reading it. But, yeah. What I found is Mad seemed to be like, especially in the pre 70s and the 70s, they had the cream of the crop primo artists and writers. I mean, it's like it was top notch. That was like the best humor stuff you could see out there. What I noticed about Cracked is they had some good artists like John Severin or something like that, but the writing was kind of okay, and it wasn't so harsh or stabbing or whatever. I thought Mad was a little more and Mad would tackle a little bit more adult subjects. Like during the years when I started, Mad would do parodies of movies like Death Wish and The Omen, stuff like that kids don't necessarily go to, especially when my age, 7, 8, 9, 10. And even like Jaws, which came out when I was like 9 years old, I didn't see it till I was like 12 when they did a double feature with
They had a
Jaws 1 and
great
2.
Jaws episode.
Yeah,
Yes.
but I was
I'm sorry. It was a great Jaws magazine. I remember that. Yeah.
oh yeah, and all
Great
the
cover.
parody magazines cover Jaws. We'll
Yeah,
talk about
yeah.
that later. But then Crazy, I thought was the funnier one of funnier than Cracked. But sometimes the artwork was really good, sometimes the artwork was really bad. And we go into that in the book and as to why and everything like that. But for some reason, because I think the writing, even if it was a bit corny at times and stuff like that, I don't know, Crazy just resonated with me. So the ones I bought consistently from when I first saw them and had to get every issue was Mad and Crazy. Cracked I would get bored with after a while, and I'd stop for a few months, and then they'd lure me back in. They go, free postcards inside, and it's like, oh, okay, or they do a parody, Mork and Mindy parody. Okay, I'll buy it again, something like that. Star Wars in this one. Okay, I'll buy this one, that type of thing, But I didn't need that encouragement on Mad or Crazy. It was just like, I can't wait for the next issue. I can't wait to see what comes next, So I was hooked.
Mark, Slade, what kind of which of these magazines was your favorite?
Oh, well, probably Mad, but Mad and Crazy were around all the time, and Cracked later in the 80s was around all the time with the car humor magazine cartoons.
Yeah.
But for me and my younger brother Tim, we always loved Crazy probably the most. If we would get my brother Doug's comic books, and it always had advertisements of this magazine Crazy, and we were like, "What is this? It looks weird." And then you go through it, you see all these funny advertisements for it. You'd see this one of Stan Lee lighting money up, asking you to buy Crazy. That was funny. But we didn't really buy it. At least I didn't get a chance to buy it until probably I was 9 or 10, probably 10. And we went into this bookshop, and there it was. And I was like, oh my goodness. I had no idea what I was buying was probably one of the last issues or the last issue. It had Casper the Ghost, a parody of that, which was a reprint from issue 8, I think, Marv Wolfman days. And it was Marv Wolfman who wrote it. I recognized his name because he wrote Tomb of Dracula. Okay. And I'm going through it, and I'm going, why would somebody do this to Casper? Because I love Casper, and then I'm starting to laugh. And I think the feature before that was Police Story. I knew Police Story very well because we watched Police Story on television. Mm-hmm. And I'm going, this is just too funny. I mean, the guy pulls out a gun and shoots him right in the police room. and I couldn't believe that they did this in a magazine, because Mad Magazine, yes, they were a lot more adult oriented, especially with combining Archie Bunker and Midnight Cowboy. That was great. But I don't know, something about Crazy that was different. And then when we went back to the bookshop, I guess they had the magazine already folded, but they still carried it on the shelf or a spinner rack. And so I bought an issue that had Obanoxio the clown as Conan, and Miss Piggy is at his feet. And I'm like, I can't believe this. It was great. It was great. Yeah. It was just a great magazine. And that was one of the magazines that me and my younger brother, along with Mad, we were in church and we were passing it around laughing. And we got in trouble for that. But, Crazy's always stuck with me. It was one of my things when I always thought about doing nonfiction. I wanted to do that. I wanted to do a book about Crazy magazine. And
that's cool.
Yeah, well, when me and Chauncey and Lothar, at the time, we were planning on doing it. I contacted Ben Omar at Bear Manor, and I said, hey, would you, go for this? And he said, hey, that's funny, because I just got some email from a guy named Mark Arnold who wants to do it. And so I was like, I recognize
He's
Mark's
stealing
name.
my idea.
No, I recognized his name. And I said, well, we'll stand aside and let Mark do it. And he said, oh, no, Mark likes to collaborate. It'll be fine. So just email him. And so we did.
Yeah.
Or I did. And then it turned out that Lothar and Chauncey was just too busy to do it. We're tied in with doing a magazine of our own and a bunch of other stuff, anthology books. And, Lothar's like, I don't feel like editing another book right now,
Super.
So,
when I was a kid, I'm sorry, Mark, you want to?
I was going to just add just one. With that many authors, it might have been more difficult to get done. So
yeah, that's harder to collaborate that way. Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, but when I was a kid, I liked Mad magazine. I think I saw Cracked. I sort of saw Cracked as a copy of Mad, if you will, you know. And as Mark Arnold, as you had indicated, it was a lesser version of Mad. But
Mhm.
I thought the art was always good. The way the cover was done all the time. The way that they would, uh, put I forget the name of the kid that's on the Mad magazine cover, but
Alfred
uh,
E. Newman.
Alfred E. Newman. And whether how they would pose him and who they would put around him or whatever, what kind of spaceship they might put him in, or put him in the Jaws. Jaws said eating him up or something like that. Whatever. It was clever, and
Yeah.
I think for me, my favorite parts was the lighter side. I always
Oh yeah.
opened the magazine and it got right to the lighter side. That was my favorite thing.
Well,
Yeah.
then you'll like one of the early issues was issue 1 actually. They do a parody of the lighter side and Crazy.
Oh,
Lighter
that's
side
fun.
of it's called the lighter side of racial violence.
Yeah, very on point.
Yeah, very much so. And
um,
who they had to ape Dave Berg's art was really good. I can't remember his name off the top of my head. I
yeah.
Yeah,
could look it up in the book, but it was really good. Yeah,
yeah.
And my favorite other thing with Mad was the parodies. They would do a
Hmm.
yeah,
parody of a TV show and or movie, as you mentioned.
right.
They did one on the Partridge Family, which is my favorite TV show,
Yeah,
and so forth. And they did one called the Putrid Family,
yeah.
and it's fantastic. I love that. You would think I might have been, being as young as I was, but like 10, 9, 10, whatever, 11 years old, I would be like ticked off about it, but I enjoyed it right off the bat. I thought that was great that they were giving it that attention. But anyway, it's great that you guys would be able to put this together, and you're working with Bear Manor, and when is it releasing? When is it being released?
It's out now.
It's
It's
out
out
now
now.
Yeah,
at a
that's why we
store
have.
bookseller near you or
That's why
Amazon
we
or
have
where else can we get
copies.
it?
But I will say this is like this is probably, and it might be thanks to Mark, the fastest turnaround I've ever done on a book.
Yeah,
I
but you
what?
already had articles written on it.
Well, that's true too, but I didn't think we would get it done so quickly. I really didn't.
Well, yeah,
Is just because I knew I had my England trip and everything like that, and of
that's
course,
true.
they. I told the the artist that was working on it, "Hey, I'm going to England for 2 weeks. Just letting you know." And of course, as soon as I'm in England, here's the manuscript. It's all done. It's like because I have no time to
Yeah,
look at it because I'm on
right.
this Beatles trip and everything like that.
Right.
So I just said it'll just have to wait. So it could have even come out even faster. But
Wow.
I go timing is everything on all this stuff.
Well, congratulations. I mean, I'm going to ask each of you to share a little bit about your history, where what other books that you've written, and where people can find you, and where they can find the book. So, Mark Slade, could I ask you to go first
Yes.
and just give me a little background as to what you've written, other than what you've already
Uh,
mentioned, and where people can
well,
contact you?
well, here, let me see. Well, of course, here's the Marvel book. I think you can see it.
Yes,
Uh,
we can.
uh,
What's it
well,
called?
it's called The Marvelous Bronze Age. Interviews with, well, interviews with Marvel creators of the 70s and 80s. Here's an anthology that we did that has like Joe Lansdale and Jack Dan, Elizabeth Massey, R.C. Matheson. Uh, I mean, I've written a lot of fiction, but you know,
What was the one that you just put out, or is it not out yet? It has like a green cover. What was that one?
oh, it's Outsider
Okay.
Comics.
Yeah.
Interviews with underground comic book creators and
Okay.
some of the newer people who have worked on comics. Some people like that. Kind of blanking on who it is, but
Is that one out
my,
yet, or is it not yet?
Yeah, it's out.
Okay.
I did that with Chauncey and Lothar.
Okay.
We, me and Chauncey actually did the interviews on Zoom, a couple, and then me and Lothar and Chauncey, we did some email interviews with some people who were like in England and places like that. And I wrote a couple essays to go with it because I don't know. I just thought that the interview thing again would be a little dull. Uh, but I mean, it it was fun at the time. The interviews there didn't go as well as the interviews for the Marvel book. I just have to say that some of the some of the people who work in independent or underground are not as professional as, say, people like Marv Wolfman. Uh, some of them are pretty out there.
Well, the
Little
fact is
hard.
that you got this out there. You're
Yeah,
doing your various different uh things that you've written, and it's bringing to light something like Crazy Magazine that maybe a lot of people like myself never heard of, or people maybe
right.
I heard about it when I was 50 years ago or whatever. Oh, geez, now I get to know how this was created, or who the writers were, and who the what was the inspiration for this, or what how did that come about. People enjoy that stuff, and they love to revel in stuff that's part of their retro life.
Yeah,
That's what we are
which
here
is
talking about
which
retro.
is which is why I'm wearing my Rockford T-shirt.
Yeah,
So,
cool. And where
and
can folks find you? Can they find you on Facebook, or
oh yeah,
how
yeah,
do you
on
want
Facebook.
people to contact you?
Doesn't matter if they want to do it that way, or my email,
Okay,
animalmother16@msn.com. But
okay.
you
And
know,
Mark
or
Slade on Facebook.
they can contact our publishing house is that me and Chauncey and Lothar started about 5 years ago, called Screaming Eye Press, and it has a website as well.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Excellent. And Mark, we know Mark. Mark Arnold has written. This is his second book to be released this year, I believe.
No, it's my
Early,
fourth.
your
It's
fourth
my
book.
fourth. That's what I
Sorry,
said.
sorry.
No, no. I have the first one that was released this year because I'm still talking about it. Not Just Happy Together, the Turtles from A to Z, AM Radio to Zappa, that I wrote with Charles F. Rosenay. So we're still promoting that.
Oh yeah,
Then the long time coming, the Crazy book has the shortest length of time. It was like 4 to 5 months. The Mad book took over 4 years to write. So,
yeah.
and that was 2 volumes, and I wrote by myself. So there we go.
Wow.
But they all managed to come. The pandemic did crazy things with my schedule and how I would get projects done, and they were just sitting on the shelf waiting to be published. And so it was just like, this is the year everything started coming out. It's like, so I got 4 books out in 1 year. And it's incredible. So
That's great. And of course, those of you who have seen Mark Arnold on various different podcasts and all that, he's written books on the Harvey comics, and he's written, as he indicated, on Mad Magazine and all kinds of things. And he has this great website called Fun Ideas Podcast, and you can check out all kinds of people that he's interviewed and so forth on that. Where else can people find you, Mark, and where can they find the book?
well, the for the book itself, I always say Amazon or BarnesandNoble.com or directly from Bear Manor Media. I do sell signed copies. At least it'll be signed by me. You'll have to find Mark Slade some other way. On eBay. But if you want to buy a signed copy, I don't charge extra for it. I just charge cover price for it, and you can buy it off of eBay. Of all my books. So, and I have various pages around, Wikipedia page, and you can see the Fun Ideas podcast on YouTube and various things like that. So I'm all over the place.
There's
But
always something fun about that podcast, man.
Facebook is probably where I'm usually hanging out, just like
Well,
Mark. So
well, that's great. I'm so glad both of you came over tonight to chat about Crazy, the magazine that Dare to Be Dumb, the brand new book released by Mark Slade and Mark Arnold. and glad to have you guys over here. And we'll
Thank
do
you.
something else again.
Okay.
All right. So I want to thank you guys and thank all of you for joining Ed's Retro. What is it called again? A Metro podcast or
It's your show.
I'm so bad with this, you know. It's Pop-O-Matic Podcast, a retro
That's right.
pop culture podcast, which you can find on YouTube. Just go to YouTube and type in Ed Rising, and my Pop-O-Matic Podcast videos will magically appear. And you can see one that I did recently with Mark Arnold and Charles Rosenet on Turtles book and all kinds of other things. And so I thank you for stopping in and checking that out. And you can always find me on Facebook. Just type in search and type in Ed Rising, and you can find me on Facebook and my smiley face and whatever. And I want to thank you guys for listening and watching tonight. Have a great night, and thank you guys for being on our show today.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, all right?